Hello, friends. Today I want to continue with chapter 2 of Ernest Sato's book collection at Cambridge University Library. So let me just find it and share it with you. Okay, here we go. Good. I hope you can see that. I'm sure you can. So, chapter 2, How Sato Acquired the Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō. Sato's manuscript copy of Ukiyo-e ruikō in his former collection. In this chapter, of course, that's Koyama-san who wrote the Japanese book, and I'm only the translator. In this chapter, I will investigate the circumstances of how Ernest Sato acquired Saito Geshin's Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō. Of course, it would be very easy and ideal if there was a memorandum of when Sato purchased Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō and something like a receipt. But as far as I have been able to ascertain, this kind of direct evidence is not available. As the next best method, I will investigate the circumstances of the time when Sato is thought to have acquired the Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō, and using this indirect evidence, get close to the situation of that time. This chapter will focus on the people who were involved in Sato's book collection. I want to approach Sato's book collecting from the point of view of the people around Sato, who were librarians, book lovers, and book collectors, and their collections. At the end of this chapter, I want to investigate Sato's acquisition of documents from Saito Geshin's former collection and consider his acquisition of Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō from that angle. But I also intend to consider Sato's acquisition of the collection of the book collector Sekine Shisei. Not merely considering the people around Sato and the collectors connected with them, I will also take a brief look at the content of the collections themselves. The collectors who appear to have had something to do with Sato's building of his collection seem to have collected many materials about ancient customs, rules, precedents, etc. Yusoku kojitsu, especially those of the samurai, buke kojitsu, and they were very interested in them. This is because when investigating Sato's collected documents, we often end up with the former collections of such documents. In the Bakumatsu and early Meiji periods, the so-called buke kojitsuka, collectors of buke kojitsu, could quite easily obtain documents which had been handed down for many years. It seems likely that at that time, particularly from about Meiji 10, 1877, or after that, Sato's collected documents included ones collected by those former buke kojitsuka collectors. Now I want to return the discussion to a matter directly connected with Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō. In fact, Ernest Sato collected at least 2 copies of Ukiyo-e ruikō apart from Saito Geshin Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō. In total, he had 3 manuscripts of Ukiyo-e ruikō, which are now held at Cambridge University Library. As regards the circumstances of their acquisition, the 3 were probably connected. So, if we investigate the process of how the other 2 manuscripts were acquired, the purchase of the Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō may become clearer. Whoops. Just gone a bit far there. There we are. In researching how Sato acquired Saito Geshin's Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō, there is one more useful manuscript apart from the 2 Ukiyo-e ruikō manuscripts already mentioned. This is the manuscript of Kyokute Bakin, 1767 to 1848. Cambridge University Library holds Bakin's Iwademo no Ki in its collection of Sato's books. This is an essay written by Bakin about Santo Kyoden. The manuscript held at Cambridge is not written by Bakin himself, but is a transcribed copy. The circumstances of how Sato acquired Kyokute Bakin's Iwademo no Ki are helpful, albeit in an indirect way, in the investigation of the Ukiyo-e ruikō manuscripts. Regarding the reason for these manuscripts being taken into Sato's collection, we may guess that it was similar for all 4 manuscripts. Okay, and on we go to the next page. Yeah, the 4 manuscripts. Next, I would like to introduce the 4 manuscripts. First, I will quote from the catalogue of the Cambridge University Library, where these manuscripts are held. They are recorded in early Japanese books in Cambridge University Library, a catalogue of the Aston, Sato, and von Siebold collections, edited by Nozomu Hayashi and Peter Kornitsky. I quote them here by their catalogue number, with other numbers and information omitted. So 2119, Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō, Gedai, outer title, 3 volumes, including supplements, Ukiyo-e Hinmoku, Toto Guji, Gaku Ryaki. Ota Nampo, original author, Saito Geshin, editor. Koka 1, 1844, manuscript copied by the editor. Notes: 1, reprinted in Yura Tetsuji's Soko Nihon Ukiyo-e ruikō. 2, there is a handwritten note which says the book was copied in spring of Tempo 15, 1844 equals Koka 1 at the beginning. At the end of volume 3, there is a note which was written in Koka 1, and it says the book was enlarged and revised by Saito Geshin. The book was supplemented by Sayaya Kuninori, Santo Kyoden, Shikite Samba, and also was supplemented further by Ikeda Eisen and enlarged and revised by Saito Geshin. 3. Inki, seals or stamps of ownership. Saito Bunko, Edo Saitoshi, Saitoshi, Geshin, Kimura Yu, Haku Setsudo. 4. There is a written note in English, for which there is a footnote 142. I think there might need to be a little bit of revision to that, but there we are. I give it as it is now. 2117, Ukiyo-e Ko, Gedai outer title, 1 volume with supplement, extracts from Tankai of Aikawa Kazumasa, Tsumura Soan, ? Manuscript copied in the latter part of the Edo period. Inki, seals or stamps of ownership, Nishiyama Shoku, Shisei Zo, and 1 seal which is unreadable. 2120, Ukiyo-e Shino Den, manuscript, copied in Meiji 9, 1876, by Shiraishi Choko. Under the title Naidai, there is note which says it imitates an essay by Fujino Ya. Is this revised copy of 2117? There is a written note at the end which says this book is a copy of Chikuin O's book, Spring Meiji 9, 1876. Inki, seals or stamps of ownership, Shiraishi Shozo. And one more here. 1312, Iwademo no Ki, Kyokute Takizawa Bakin. We got some footnotes from Hayashi and Kornitsky, early Japanese books in Cambridge University Library. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Manuscript copied in Meiji 8, 1875 by Shiraishi Choko. This is a copy of Sakata Moroto's book. There are corrections in red ink. Also, the following was written by hand at the end of the book. Nagai Jussoku's own note says he copied the book in the middle of August of Bunkyu 2, 1862, borrowing it secretly from Mr. Kawatake. Saito Geshin's note says he copied the book borrowing it from Mr. Nagai. Tatsuta Karyu's note says he copied the book in the middle 10 days of March of Keio 4, 1868, borrowing from Saito Geshin. This Iwademo no Ki was copied by an elegant writer who lived near Iwashimizu Shrine, Kuramae Shrine, in Asakusa, borrowing it from his friend Sakata-o. Since it was written hastily, it would be better revised. This copy was made in the middle of autumn of Meiji 8, 1875. This was a book in Shiraishi Choko's collection. Shiraishi Choko was Sato's librarian. Whoops, that should be an R, shouldn't it? Librarian. Inki, seals or stamps of ownership, Shiraishi Shozo. What's that? I don't want that. Automatically saved. Okay, fair enough. In the early Japanese books in Cambridge University Library, Shiraishi Shozo, Shiraishi Choko, and Shisei Zo are mentioned. Above, I stated that I want to approach Sato's book collecting from the point of view of the people around Sato who were librarians, book lovers, and book collectors and their collections. These people include Shiraishi and Shisei. In the second half of this chapter, I intend to compare the 4 manuscripts in Sato's former collection with those in other collections. This may be regarded as the highlight, medama, of this chapter. But in order to understand this comparison, it is not only the manuscripts, but knowledge is also required about the people who transcribed them and the collectors. First, I will start by introducing the people connected with the building of Sato's collection. I will introduce 5 people: Shiraishi Mamichi, Shiraishi Senbetsu, Miyamoto Koichi, Sekine Shisei, and Sakata Moroto. By explaining about them beforehand, it will be easier to understand the connections between the 4 manuscripts and the building of Sato's book collection. So here we go. Shiraishi Mamichi, after working in the Foreign Office, became Sato's librarian, Toshogakari. Shiraishi Senbetsu was Mamichi's father. Miyamoto Koichi was a high official in the Foreign Office and Sekine Shisei and Sakata Moroto were book collectors. Sakata compiled Zokutsu Shinzenran in the Foreign Office and was the superior of Mamichi. Regarding the last two collectors, Sekine and Sakata, their connection with Ernest Sato was an indirect one through the collections. It may be the case that Sato directly purchased books from Sekine Shisei. Later, I will talk about other collectors apart from Sekine Shisei, Sakata Moroto, Shiraishi Sembetsu or Sembetsu, and his son Mamichi, such as Saito Geshin, Otsuki Joden, and others. They may have been connected to a very loose group of collectors. Of course, in speaking of a group or network, it probably means nothing more than that they were acquaintances and associates. Their common link was simply that they were all book collectors. It is likely that they were further linked by acquisitions of documents from former Buke Kojitsuka collectors. After Saito Geshin's death, Sato bought his book collection, Yet it seems that before he did this, the book collector Sekine Shisei had the pick of the collection and sifted through it. Furuiwake, sorry. Sekine Shisei frequently borrowed from Saito Geshin's collection and created manuscripts from it. And this is how he came to screen the collection. Of course, the Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō was one of the documents in Saito Geshin's collection, but it somehow escaped Sekine Shisei's screening. This is why Sato was able to acquire Saito Geshin's manuscript. Shiraishi Mamichi, Sato's librarian, Toshogakari. Shiraishi Mamichi was born in 1848, Kaie 1, and died on May the 21st, 1880, Meiji 13. He was 33 years old by the Kazoe Doshi Buddhist counting system, counting 1 year in the womb, newborns being 1 year old, when he died. Regarding the year of his birth, there are documents which suggest it was 1 year earlier, but his career is, as recorded in the Foreign Office documents, states that he was 24 years old in 1871, Meiji 4 by Kazoe Doshi, which confirms the year of his birth as 1848. In the Shinshu Hirata Atsutane Zenshu, new edition of Hirata Atsutane's complete works, in a separate volume, there are Seishicho, a register of oaths, and Monjin Seimei Roku, a record of full names of pupils. Hirata Atsutane and his successor Hirata Kanetani had pupils at their private school called Ibukinoya. We know this from the Seishicho and the Monjin Seimei Roku. Shiraishi Mamichi entered the Ibukinoya in May 1870, Meiji 3. His age, according to the Seishicho at that time, was 23, and in the Monjin Seimei Roku, it was 24. Both of these are by the Kazoe Doshi system. By working backwards, he was either born in 1847, Koka 4, or 1848, Kaie 1. According to the Foreign Office record already mentioned, it was 1848, so I will take that to be the correct year in this book. Regarding the year and date of his death, I will refer later to an entry in Ernest Sato's diary. As regards the name Mamichi, Shiraishi had other names such as Kichiro and Mikaguri. His father was Shiraishi Sembetsu. Kichiro was one of his father's names. On his father's retirement in June 1868, KO4, Mamichi became the head of the family. In October 1870, Meiji 3, he was appointed a supernumerary first secretary at the Foreign Office with jurisdiction over 15 koku. It seems that Shiraishi Choko was another name of Shiraishi Mamichi. This may have referred to the Sumida River in Tokyo. Mamichi's appointment to the Foreign Office was at the recommendation of the former shogunate retainer Miyamoto Koichi and Tanabe Taichi. There may also have been involvement of his father Sembetsu. Mamichi's section at the Foreign Office was engaged in editing and compiling the Zokutsu Shinzenran, the former diplomatic records of the shogunate. Here are some footnotes to support everything said here. On we go to the next page. His father, Shiraishi Sembetsu, had been a magistrate for foreign affairs, Gaikoku Bugyo, and a Niigata magistrate, and was familiar with these documents, which may also have helped Mamichi to secure the position. Returning to Shiraishi Mamichi's career, in June 1868, he was 21 by Kazoe Doshi when he became head of the family, and in May 1870, he entered Ibukinoya. In October of that year, he was appointed to the Foreign Office and worked there until January 1877. So he worked at the Foreign Office for more than 6 years, and from August 1877, he began to work as Sato's librarian. Checking the Foreign Office employee records, the following becomes clear. Shiraishi Mamichi's name appears in December 1871 and in February of the following year as the secretary of the 14th grade. However, in May 1872, there is an entry indicating that Shiraishi Mamichi, 14th grade, registered in Suruga in Shizuoka Prefecture from August. The reason for this description of him as a person registered in Suruga, Shizuoka Prefecture, is that he was a former low-ranked retainer of the shogunate, and after the Meiji Restoration, the former retainers were all transferred to Suruga, Shizuoka Prefecture, but he stayed there only for a short time. I have a feeling I may have translated very word for word here. Mamichi was appointed in October 1870 as a supernumerary first secretary, and in August of the following year was probably promoted to the 14th grade. His work was probably the compilation of the Zokutsu Shinzenran. After that, in July 1876, he was promoted to 13th grade and officially appointed a member of the compilation team. Before that, the team had been Sakata Moroto, Koike Setsuzo, Miyamoto Kofu, and Katsurano Susumu, but Koike resigned in 1875, so Mamichi took his place. I wonder if I could be very bold and delete one of those Shizuoka prefectures, because we're repeating it rather a lot there. Let's delete that one, shall we? Okay, and on we go. I think I've done this paragraph, so we carry on with the next one. Shiraishi Mamichi's rank of 14th grade was the second from the bottom rank in the Foreign Office register. But what about the ranks of Sakata Moroto, Miyamoto Koichi, and Tanabe Taichi? Or Taichi, sorry. For example, in the Register of Foreign Office Employees printed on March 5th of Meiji 7, 1874, Sakata Moroto was listed as a Gon no Dairoku, 8th grade equivalent, or between 8th and 9th grade. Miyamoto Koichi was a Daijo, and Tanabe Taichi was at the 4th grade. Daijo was 1 grade above the 4th grade. In other words, apart from Mamichi, they were all high officials. In Sakata's case, he was probably a specialist high official. Regarding the editing of the Zokutsu Shinzenran, I shall refer to it when I introduce Sakata Moroto below, but the connection with Mamichi is as follows. In January 1877, Meiji 10, when the Foreign Office ranking system for officials was revised, the roles of Sakata Moroto, Miyamoto, Kofu, Katsurano Susumu, and Shiraishi Mamichi were all abolished. It is likely that Mamichi left the Foreign Office at this point. He had only just been appointed formally to the compilation team 6 months previously. Regarding the compilation of the Zokutsu Shinzenran, after Shiraishi Mamichi left the Foreign Office, only Sakata Moroto was appointed at the 1st grade and continued the work. Miyamoto Kofu and Katsurano Susumu returned to their former work, and Yoda Morikatsu was added to the team. Yoda Morikatsu was the last Kanagawa magistrate, Bugyo, and had prior experience of editing the Zokutsu Shinzenran. In the end, only Mamichi was dismissed from the work of compilation. This may be because he was the youngest and the last to join the compilation team. LIFO, last in, first out, maybe. That's an accounting principle, isn't it? After Shiraishi Mamichi left the Foreign Office, he became Ernest Sato's secretary, in substance his librarian. Probably this was through the good offices of his superior at the Foreign Office, Miyamoto Koichi. Ernest Sato completed almost 2 years of leave, furlough in American English, and returned to Japan in February 1877, Meiji 10, and returned to Tokyo in March. From August the 6th, 1877, Mamichi began to work in Sato's house as secretary librarian. Sato noted in his diary for that day, "My new secretary, Shiraishi Mamichi, came to work for the first time today. He appears a quiet, modest young man with a great fund of erudition and is very oriental in his looks." On the same day, his father, Shiraishi Sembetsu Chiwaki, visited Sato's house. He probably came to check out his son's new workplace. After that, Sato and Shiraishi Sembetsu read the Ise Monogatari and other classics for 3 hours. Shiraishi Mamichi, while he was working as Sato's librarian, succumbed to tuberculosis. It is not clear when he fell ill. In his diary entry for July 16, 1879, Sato wrote the following: "It was almost 2 years since Mamichi had begun to work as Sato's librarian. Poor Shiraishi has had an attack of hemoptysis, coughing up blood. He is evidently consumptive and I'm afraid will not live long. After this, Shiraishi Mamichi's condition improved slightly, and in the following year, on May 12, 1880, Meiji 13, Sato wrote in his diary, Shiraishi Beta. That part is from my book, A Diplomat in Japan, Part 2, The Diaries of ERNEST Sato, 1870 to 1883, available from lulu.com. However, only 9 days later, on May 21st at 2 p.m., Shiraishi passed away in Sato's home at 2 p.m. Oh, golly. Only 9 days later, on May the 21st at 2 p.m., Shiraishi passed away in Sato's home at 2 p.m. Well, I don't think we need 2 at 2 p.m.s, do we? So let's get rid of one of them. It's a good job I'm reading through this thing. I should have, it's a little embarrassing, but I'm checking as I go, as you can see. Whoops. That should do it. Yeah. Shiraishi Mamichi's father, Senbetsu, hinted that he wanted to succeed his son in the post of Sato's librarian, and Sato's friend Suzuki Matoshi had recommended a pupil of his own to fill the vacancy. But Sato did not feel anyone would be as good as Shiraishi Mamichi, who was so entirely satisfactory, and he did not fill the vacancy. I feel a degree of discomfort at the idea that Shiraishi Senbetsu should have proposed to take his son's place as librarian at his funeral. But while Mamichi was alive, he probably assisted him as librarian, so the proposal may have been made in that context. Senbetsu himself may have enjoyed lending a hand with Sato's book collecting. After Mamichi's death, the post remained vacant for at least 1.5 years. Eventually, in about March 1882, a man called Kahawi, possibly Kawai, was employed as Mamichi's successor. At least his name appears as the new librarian in Sato's diary for March the 13th, 1882. It is not clear what education Mamichi received apart from at the Ibukinoya, but he does seem to have received a proper education. In a letter sent to his friend F.V. Dickens in 1879, that's Frederick Victor Dickens. Please note it's Dickens with an I, not Dickens, but Dickens, 2 I's in fact. In a letter to his friend F.V. Dickens in 1879, Sato evaluates Shiraishi Mamichi highly. He praises him thus: "He is the first Japanese of real learning that I ever met." Regarding the end of Shiraishi Mamichi, I feel some doubt about why he died in Sato's house. Was he living in the house while working as Sato's librarian? Did he not have his own house? It is also said that the funeral took place in Sato's home. In Meiji 10 to 11, 1877 to 8, Shiraishi Mamichi made a request to Tokyo Prefecture to change the size of his house, i.e. enlarge it. Is there some connection with this? The reason why I am investigating the place where Shiraishi Mamichi resided when he died is connected with his ex libris stamp, Zo Shoin. The Shiraishi father and son, Senbetsu and Mamichi, had probably amassed a decent size of collection, and it is marked with the ex libris stamp, Shiraishi collection. Of course, they must have shared the books in the collection. It is hard to believe that the son treated all the books in the collection as belonging only to him. Taking into account the situation when he died, it is probably more accurate to state that the collection was mostly assembled by his father Senbetsu. Furthermore, the Shiraishi family book collection probably goes back to Mamichi's grandfather, Judayu Yoshiro. Anyway, I shall have more to say about the Shiraishi collection ex libris stamp later. And you can see that there's quite a lot of quotations from my work there. My edited version of the diaries. It's also not only available with lulu.com, but from Amazon, I think now. Amazon KDP, perhaps as a smaller paperback, I think, if I'm right. Yeah. Okay, Shiraishi Senbetsu. Shiraishi Senbetsu Chiwaki was Shiraishi Mamichi's father. He had various names, including Chudayu, Katsutaro, Yoshiro Kichiro, Shimaoka, and as an official title, Shimofusa or Shimosa no Kami. His pen names, Go, included Senbetsu, Imayo, etc. So he had a whole host of names, as a lot of these people did. Senbetsu was born in 1817, Bunka 14, and died in 1887, Meiji 20. He was 70 years old when he died. He was 7 years younger than Sakata Moroto and 8 years younger than Sekine Shisei. He was probably born into the house of a vassal of the shogunate, Gokenin. His grandfather, Shiraishi Chudayu, was an officer of building, Fushinyaku, and his father, Shiraishi Judayu Yoshiro, was a chief accountant and was promoted to Hatamoto, vassal of the shogun. When Senbetsu became head of the Shiraishi family, it already had Hatamoto status. In the late Edo period, when academic tests began to test the scholarship of vassals, Senbetsu's father, Shiraishi Judayu Yoshiro, distinguished himself as one of the best three in the seventh test in Bunsei 1, 1818. He passed the test, and so the family gained promotion to Hatamoto status. Otanampo Naojiro, who has already been mentioned in the manuscripts of Ukiyo-e ruikō, passed the second round of the same test in Kansei 6, 1794, and Miyamoto Koichi and his father, Miyamoto Kyuhei, passed the 15th and 13th rounds in Ansei 3, 1856, and Koka 5, 1848, respectively. The name of Shiraishi Senbetsu does not appear in the list of successful candidates in the examinations, but like his father, he appears to have proceeded smoothly in the course of Hatamoto. It is not clear whether he took the academic test. Even without this evidence, he succeeded in entering the class of vassals. He was probably an able Hatamoto and continued to win promotion. In 1843, Tempo 9, Shiraishi Senbetsu became head of the family, and in 1851, Kaie 4, he became a prefectural governor, Daikan. In 1859, Ansei 6, he was appointed head of the Board of Magistrates of Foreign Affairs, Gaikoku Bugyo. In 1864, a Kanagawa magistrate, and in 1865, a magistrate of foreign affairs. Again, I suppose. Then he was appointed to the post of Niigata magistrate. As prefectural governor, he worked at Dewa no Kuni, now Yamagata and Akita prefectures, from 1851 until the following year, and then for 3 years as a high official at Ikuno Ginzan, Ikuno silver mine in Tanba province. Senbetsu's writings and Senbetsu's writings and diary from his time as a daikan are held as the Shiraishi diaries, Shiraishi Nikki, at the Kano Bunko database in Tohoku University Library. Also, his diary as a magistrate of foreign affairs, Bakumatsu Gaikoku Bugyo Shiraishi Chudayu Nikki, 3 volumes, is held at the National Diet Library and Nagoya University Library. His writings, Wakashu, collected poems from his time as an official at the Ikuno silver mine, are held at Notre Dame Women's University Library. There's some various footnotes there. You can pause the video if you want to check them. Or, of course, if you have the book or a copy of it, you can look there. There are also his documents relating to Yusoku Kojitsu. In short, Shiraishi Senbetsu, while he was a high shogunate vassal, was an able writer and knew a lot about waka poetry, arts, and the classics. By the US-Japan Treaty of Amity and Commerce of 1858, Niigata port was one of the 5 ports to be opened. To prepare for this, the shogunate in 1865 transferred Shiraishi Senbetsu from Kanagawa, where he was a foreign magistrate, to Niigata with the same role. In 1867, when the British minister, Sir Harry Parkes, did a tour of inspection of Niigata and Hokuriku, Ernest Sato accompanied him. Parkes went to Niigata to assess its suitability as an open port. At that time, Parkes and Sato met Shiraishi Senbetsu, who was the Niigata magistrate. Sato writes the following about their meeting in A Diplomat in Japan. After we had waited for a few minutes, the governor came in. He proved to be Shiraishi Shimosa no Kami, an old acquaintance of mine when he held a similar post at Yokohama in 1864 and 1865. In those days, we used often to have serious disputes about the claims of British subjects against defaulting Japanese merchants and questions of customs duties. But I found him now in quite a different mood. He was very polite and cheery and alluded with regret to the ridiculous arguments which in former days, under a different regime, he had been obliged to maintain against me. Now that the foreign ministers had visited the tycoon at Osaka, all was to be changed, and our intercourse was to be really friendly. Shiraishi Senbetsu, when he had been Kanagawa magistrate, had had many serious disputes with Sato and others, but at Niigata in the year before the Meiji Restoration, he seems to have had a softer and more relaxed attitude. In 1867, the shogunate, in order to prepare for the opening of the ports, called the deputy foreign magistrate Kasuya Yoshiaki to Niigata and recalled Shiraishi Senbetsu from Niigata to Edo. But while Shiraishi was at Edo, Tokyo, the opening of Niigata was postponed. In January 1868, when Shiraishi arrived back in Niigata from Edo, the Boshin War, 1868 to 9, had already begun, and the army of the new Meiji government had begun its advance on the Hokurikudo. Shiraishi was ordered by the army to surrender to the Takada clan at Takada in Niigata. He did not surrender, giving illness as the reason, and sent Tanaka Kentaro of the Niigata magistrate's office instead. At that time, Tanaka was ordered by the new Meiji government army to present documents regarding the jurisdictional area of Niigata. Tanaka and Shiraishi wanted to receive instructions from the shogunate about this, so in April 1868 they went to Edo. After that, Sembetsu never returned to Niigata as a foreign magistrate. In Edo, Shiraishi was told by the shogunate to obey the imperial edict, the order of the new Meiji government army, to submit the documents relating, and there you have footnotes, relating to the jurisdiction of Niigata to the army. He did as ordered, and in the following month of May 1868, he resigned as magistrate. After that, Sembetsu also gave up his position as head of the Shiraishi family to his son Mamichi. Shiraishi Sembetsu was a vassal of the shogun Hatamoto, but as has already been mentioned, he was a scholar of Japanese literature and culture, kokugakusha, and also a poet. In the Meiji era, he also became a journalist. He is mentioned in the Kokugakusha Denki Shusei, biographies of Kokugaku scholars. Chiwaki learned composition of poems from Ajiro Hironori, Hanagaki Yukikuni, Okuni Takamasa, and others, and liked to compose poems in Imayo, ancient verse style. So he was named Imayo Okina, an old man of Imayo. Also, he was good at calligraphy. At the beginning of the Meiji era, after working at the Foreign Office, a museum, etc., he became the editor-in-chief of the Iroha Shimbun newspaper and later librarian at the Ministry of the Imperial Household. The Foreign Office work, as we have seen, included cooperation with the Zokutsu Shinzenran, compiled by Sakata Moroto. Sembetsu, apart from his work at the Foreign Office, worked at the museum, the predecessor of the Tokyo National Museum, a kind of administrative office, and the Library of the Imperial Household. Sembetsu's work at the Foreign Office may have been a factor in his son Mamichi entering the Foreign Office. Regarding Shiraishi Mamichi's successor as Sato's librarian, I have referred to Sato's friend Suzuki Matoshi, but it may be the case that Shiraishi Sembetsu or he and his son had some role in introducing Sato and Suzuki. Sembetsu may have worked with Matoshi in the imperial household or the museum. Sato and Suzuki Matoshi may have become acquainted through someone connected with the Ibuki-no-ya, for example, Miyamoto Koichi. Suzuki Matoshi was a pupil at the Ibuki-no-ya school, and Miyamoto Koichi was a distant relative of Hirata Kanetane. Shiraishi Sembetsu received the support of Kurimoto Joun, editor-in-chief of the Yubin Hochi Shimbun, and a former vassal of the shogunate, and in December 1878, Meiji 11, he published the Azuma Shimbun newspaper, and in the following year, December 1879, changed its name to the Iroha Shimbun. The Iroha Shimbun was a Ko Shimbun newspaper, which in the early Meiji era produced entertaining articles for the common people. O Shimbun, literally big newspapers, dealt with political topics, and Ko Shimbun meant small newspapers, dealing with small topics, non-political. The managing editor of the Azuma Shimbun and its successor, the Iroha Shimbun, was Shiraishi Sembetsu, but Kanagaki Robun and his son were assistants and chief editors. In the following year, January 1880, Robun became the president of the printing company Kyobunsha and took over the running of the Iroha Shimbun newspaper. Excuse me, I'll have a quick drink while you look at the footnotes. All right, on we go. As can be seen from the above, Shiraishi Sembetsu's role at the Iroha Shimbun was a limited one. Shiraishi and Kanagaki Robun were comrades and colleagues in a new newspaper business. Kanagaki was 12 years younger than Shiraishi. What kind of relationship did they have? Sembetsu as the elite former shogunate official and Robun as the town merchant and cheap fiction writer. Kanagaki Robun had close relations with Sekine Shisei through book collections, etc. Shiraishi Sembetsu was a vassal of the shogunate, a kokugaku scholar, poet, journalist, etc., but he was also a book collector. It is likely that Shiraishi Shozo was the ex libris stamp of the Shiraishi father and son, Sembetsu and Mamichi, but the stamp probably indicates Sembetsu's collection more than his son's. It might also represent books collected by Sembetsu's father, Judayu Yoshiro. Okay, next is Miyamoto Koichi, 1836 to 1916. Miyamoto Koichi's given name may be read in two ways, Okazu and Koichi. In Sato's diary, Okazu is written, but in this book we will use Koichi. Miyamoto Koichi's role was to liaise between Ernest Sato and the Shiraishi father and son, Senbetsu and Mamichi. It seems likely that he introduced them to Sato. As mentioned above, Sato had already met Senbetsu several times in the Bakumatsu period, 1853 to 1867, when he was a Kanagawa and Niigata magistrate. Furthermore, Miyamoto Koichi was also connected to the meeting of Sakata Moroto and the Shiraishi father and son. Probably Miyamoto Koichi introduced Shiraishi Senbetsu to the compiler of the Zokutsu Shinzenran, who was Sakata Moroto. Shiraishi Senbetsu had been a foreign magistrate and a Niigata magistrate in the Bakumatsu period, so he was very useful to the compiler of the Zokutsu Shinzenran. Also, Shiraishi Mamichi had worked in the Foreign Office under Sakata Moroto. As already stated, Shiraishi Mamichi found employment at the Foreign Office thanks to the recommendation of Miyamoto Koichi and Tanabe Taichi. Keep wanting to say Taichi, but it's actually Taichi. Tanabe Taichi. Of these two, Taichi was several years older than Koichi. Also, as regards the academic entrance test, Gakumon Ginmi, their parent, Miyamoto Kyuhei, had taken the 13th test in Koka 5. Koichi passed the test 8 years later, the 15th one in Ansei 3, 1856. It is rare that the Miyamoto father and son should have the same qualification. Tanabe Taichi went overseas twice in the Bakumatsu period and also joined the Iwakura mission in the early Meiji period, that's 1871 to 73. So he had abundant overseas experience. Meanwhile, in the Foreign Office only just established, Miyamoto Koichi and Tanabe Taichi were colleagues with the same background as former vassals of the shogun. For example, regarding the head of the record-keeping department, which was charged with the compiling of the Zokutsu Shinzenran, the first head was Tanabe Taichi, then it was Miyamoto Koichi, and then Tanabe took it over again. They took it in turns. It was these two men who recommended Shiraishi Senbetsu's son and heir, Mamichi, to the Foreign Office. Again, as regards the history of the administration of diplomacy, Tanabe Taichi and Miyamoto Koichi are interesting since their careers span the period of the change from Bakumatsu to Meiji Restoration, from vassals of the shogunate to diplomatic officials. Of course, Tanabe had the more brilliant career, but Miyamoto's career is also interesting. The same as Tanabe Taichi, Miyamoto Koichi worked in the Bakumatsu as a Kanagawa and foreign magistrate, and in the Foreign Office in the Meiji era, and contributed to the smooth transition between the two administrations. In the Bakumatsu period, Miyamoto Koichi worked as the head of the Kanagawa Magistrate's Office, and after the restoration in the Tokyo Prefectural Government, the predecessor of the Foreign Office, as a diplomat. And in 1869, after the Foreign Office was founded in various roles in the Foreign Office, and finally as a senior diplomatic secretary, Gaimudai Shokikan. After that, he left the Foreign Office and worked as an official in the Chamber of Elders, Genroin, and was appointed by imperial nomination to the House of Peers. He is one of the former vassals of the shogunate whose career advanced most smoothly as a Meiji official. He also contributed to the promotion of the unrecognized good deeds of the Shogitai group of elite shogunal infantry. Miyamoto Koichi was born in 1836, Tempo 7, and died in 1916, Taisho 5, at the age of 80. He was like Shiraishi Judayu Yoshiro, his father Miyamoto Kyuhei, and Tanabe Taichi, successful in the academic test to enter the shogunate administration. These people had been capable officials in the shogunate. In the case of his father Kyuhei, he was not a high official and did not advance very far. He may have been more of a scholar. Koichi's mother, Kyuhei's wife, was the niece of Hirata Kanetane, the heir of the Kokugaku scholar Hirata Atsutane, a very famous Hirata Atsutane. Koichi also had connections with the Ibukinoya private school, Shijuku, run by the Hirata family. For example, it was Koichi who introduced Shiraishi Mamichi to the Ibukinoya. In 1877, when he returned to Japan from his leave, Sato was probably looking for a librarian secretary. Since Sato knew Miyamoto Koichi from his work at the Foreign Office, he may have asked him to introduce a suitable person. Koichi introduced Shiraishi Mamichi, who had left the Foreign Office, and Sato employed him. Or perhaps Koichi asked Sato to employ Mamichi. Either way, Shiraishi Mamichi began to work in Sato's house as his librarian in August 1877, Meiji 10. Librarian is one case, but whenever Sato wanted to employ a Japanese, he seems to have asked Miyamoto Koichi. He wrote in later years in his diary when he was British minister, the 5th of October 1895, drove with Miss Lowther to gardens at Some and Sugamo, came across Ito Koemon, who supplied trees for the legation grounds in 1875, having been recommended by Miyamoto Koichi. Oops, sorry. Another problem with this end of the page. In 1875, Sato had employed a gardener, Uekishi, on the recommendation of Miyamoto Koichi of the Foreign Office. That is presumably why he employed Shirai Shimamichi as his librarian on the recommendation of Koichi. There's another reference to a different part of the diaries that I've transcribed, beg your pardon, and edited. The 1895 to 1900 diaries. All right, next is Sakata Moroto, 1810 to 1897. Sakata Moroto was born on November the 8th, 1810, Bunka 7, in Chikuzen no Kuni, now Fukuoka Prefecture, Kurate-gun, Nogata-cho, as the second son of a doctor. Yeah, just down the road from here in Kee-tah-kew-shoo. His character was calm, strong, manly, and he had spirit. From his childhood, he liked scholarship, and in his youth, he left his home to study in Nagasaki. Later, he entered the family of the Akitsuki clan member Sakata Moroyasu as an adopted heir, Yoshi, where he was first called Morochika, but in 1859, Ansei 6, when the head of the Akitsuki clan, Kuroda Nagayoshi, was appointed Omi no Kami, he changed his name from Morochika to Moroto. He gave up the character Chika out of respect for the clan chief. Chika. Also, Chika means near and Toi means far. So Toi is the antonym of Chika. Yeah. To is the antonym of Chika. Or O. It's all very complicated here. People who study Japanese will have an idea of what I'm on about, or what this is about. In 1837, Tempo 8, Moroto was ordered to work as a gorikushi, a foot soldier perhaps, of the Akitsuki clan. In 1839, he took over as head of the family from his adoptive father, who was paid an extra income and became a gorikushi. Since he had knowledge of yusoku kojitsu, ceremonies and customs of the court, nobility, samurai, etc., in 1846, he was appointed to a suitable post relating to etiquette within the clan and promoted in 1850. In 1852, he was ordered to Edo, promoted again, and in the following year was ordered by the clan to treat etiquette, shitsuke, as his family business, kagyo. Summarizing the above process, Moroto inherited the title of family heir of an Akitsuki clan member and was appointed to quite a low rank, gorikushi, in the clan, but because he knew a lot about yusoku kojitsu, he was given a role, shitsuke and kiroku shinan, connected with that at the same time. His first official post may have been as a kirokugata, keeper of records. Later, Moroto worked at the Foreign Office, but in his personal curriculum vitae submitted to the Foreign Office, it is stated that for 22 years, from 1837 to 1858, he worked in the Akitsuki clan as a keeper of records and instructor of archery on horseback. The titles given him, Rikushi, Kogashi, Shirakaku, Kirokugata, and Shitsuke Shinan, probably signified this work. In 1852, Kaie 5, when he proceeded to Edo, he was 43 years old by Kazoe Doshi, but it seems likely that he had already studied Yusoku Kojitsu in Edo before that. Kazoe Doshi, where you count an extra year in the womb. Yeah. In 1852, he was probably sent by the Akitsuki clan to Edo to further deepen his knowledge of Yusoku Kojitsu, but it can be guessed that he had already studied the subject at Edo at an earlier stage. 3 years later, in 1855, Ansei 2, he was ordered by the clan to go with a new job title once more to Nagasaki, where he made the acquaintance of Hirano Kuniomi, 1828 to 1864. In Hirano Kuniomi's biography, it is stated that Moroto studied Yusoku Kojitsu in Edo for 20 years and records him in this way. He came to Edo and studied Yusoku Kojitsu from 3 famous scholars, Matsuoka Yukiyoshi, Kurihara Ryuan, and Hanawa Jiro, and also studied horseback archery for 20 years, winning high praise for his achievements. In 1855, he left Edo and returned to the Akitsuki clan as a kanjo gata and was sent again to Nagasaki, where he met Kuniomi and taught him. I'm wanting to call somebody who learns horseback archery, or I'm wanting to call that Yabusame, but I'm not sure if that's what is meant here, or what the original Japanese was, but there we are. According to this Hirano Kuniomi biography, from about 20 years prior to his leaving Edo in 1855, in other words, in the Tempo era, he had studied from famous scholars of Yusoku Kojitsu and Kokugaku and accumulated knowledge of the subject. This was before his coming to Edo in 1852. Hirano got to know him in Nagasaki, where he had been sent to work with the relatively low rank of Kanjo Gata and learnt many things from him. In fact, Moroto's contact with Hirano Kuniomi and members of other clans in Nagasaki later became a problem for him. In the Asakura-gun Kyodo Jinbutsushi, biographies of people from Asakura-gun, it is stated that Moroto studied the imperial learning, Kogaku, studies about the imperial history of Japan, from Matsuoka Akiyoshi and his son Ukiyo-e, and in the Akitsuki Shiko, history of Akitsuki, from Matsuoka Tokikata and his son Ukiyo-e. Furthermore, both books state that the scholastic lineage of the Matsuokas was directly descended from Hanawa Hoki-ichi, and that Moroto told this scholastic lineage to Hirano Kuniomi. It seems that Moroto in Edo studied Yusoku Kojitsu from 3 generations of the Matsuoka family from the Kurume clan, Tokikata, Ukiyo-e, and Akiyoshi. But Matsuoka Akiyoshi was much younger than Moroto, and the Asakura history may have confused the grandson Akiyoshi with the grandfather Tokikata. Ooh, I need a drink. Okay, here we go. On. Matsuoka Tokikata had studied Kokugaku from Hanawa Hoki-ichi, 1746 to 1821, who had founded the Wagaku Kodansho as an educational and research institute for the study of Wagaku and was its president. Matsuoka had also studied from very famous Yusoku Kojitsu scholars such as Takakura Nagamasa, Kuge Kojitsu, and Ise Sadaharu Buke Kojitsu, and had set up his own Matsuoka line of Yusoku Kojitsu. Tokikata's scholarly works include Ikkai Benzu, Shozoku Shikibun, Zue, etc. Ise Sadaharu was the grandson of Ise Sadatake and had inherited the family headship from him. Ise Sadatake was the top researcher into Buke Kojitsu, customs, etc. of the samurai, and the author of many works such as Teijo Zakki, Anzai, Zuihitsu, etc. Matsuoka Ukiyo-e was Tokikata's son, and he inherited the Matsuoka style of Yusoku Kojitsu study. He also studied the Takakura style of Kuge Kojitsu and the Ogasawara style of Buke Kojitsu. Ukiyo-e was critical of scholarship and learning purely on paper. He produced armor and revived the ancient samurai custom of the hunting of dogs, Inu o mono. His works included the Komatsu Nikki. Matsuoka Akiyoshi was Ukiyo-e's son, and like his father and grandfather, was active in the field of Yusoku Kojitsu. After the Meiji Restoration, he worked in various posts, including professor at the Normal School for Women, the Office of Japanese Classics Research, Kyusho, Tokyo University, etc., and he helped compile Koji Ruien. Some footnotes there, 3. Yeah, Asakura is quite close to where I am here in Kee-tah-kew-shoo. Well, it's within a day's drive anyway. Kurihara Ryuan, who was mentioned in the quotation above from Hirano Kuniomi's biography, is the same person as the Buke Kojitsu scholar Kurihara Nobumitsu. He studied Yusoku Kojitsu from Yashiro Hirokata, 1758 to 1841, and helped to compile Hirokata's Kokon Yoran. Also, Hanawa Jiro is Hanawa Hoki-ichi's heir, 4th son, Hanawa Tadatomi, and as a Kokugaku scholar, he inherited the works of the Wagaku Kodansho. It is said that Hanawa Tadatomi was murdered during the Bakamatsu period by Ito Hirobumi and Yamao Yozo. Oh dear. Ito as a murderer, that's not a good look, is it? He became prime minister 4 times. As we know from the fact that Moroto worked in the Akitsuki clan as a keeper of records and instructor of archery on horseback, He studied from very famous Yusoku Kojitsu and Kokugaku scholars, such as Matsuoka Tokikata and his son Yukiyoshi, Kurihara Nobumitsu, Hanawa Tadatomi, and others, and he already knew a lot about Yusoku Kojitsu from his time as an Akitsuki clan member. He was probably also proficient with the handling of records. His works include Shogun-kei Shozoku Ko, thoughts on the costumes of the shogunal family. Anyway, in later years, Moroto was able to work in the Foreign Office, and his knowledge of Yusoku Kojitsu and the handling of records must have stood him in good stead. By the way, there is in the front pages there is an illustration or portrait maybe of Moroto. He already had a high reputation for these things during his time as an Akitsuki clan member. Since he had these achievements behind him, when he entered the Meiji era, it can be easily imagined that he had a strong interest in the literature of the Bukkei Kojitsu, customs of the samurai. Hirano Kuniomi was a Fukuoka clan member. He studied Bukkei Kojitsu in 1855 and 1856 in Nagasaki from Sakata Moroto, and in 1857 he submitted his written report to the head of the clan, Kuroda Nagahiro. Hirano made direct appeal to Nagahiro in front of his palanquin and was ordered to stay at home. Probably this is why the Akitsuki clan, which was a branch of the Fukuoka clan, got to hear of Moroto's intercourse with samurai of other clans, Hirano Kuniomi, and so in 1857, he was dismissed from his post at Nagasaki and retired at Akitsuki in 1858. After he was dismissed from his post, Moroto opened a school, a juku, for the study of Bukkei Kojitsu. Kuniomi entered Moroto's juku in 1857, and in the spring of the following year, he began to research Bukkei Kojitsu under Moroto. Oh dear. Another drink. In the Edo period, in Nagasaki, there was the Nagasaki Magistrates Court, Bugyosho. After the Meiji Restoration, the work of the court was passed to the Nagasaki Assembly, Nagasaki Court, Kyushu Chimbu, Nagasaki Governor's Office, and then to Nagasaki Prefecture, Fu, and then Ken. This happened in a very short time, from 1868 until the middle of 1869. In that period, the organization name went through a dizzying number of changes. Sawa Nobuyoshi was appointed by the new Meiji government as Kyushu Chimbu, governor and head of foreign affairs, and head of the Nagasaki court simultaneously. After that, he became Nagasaki prefectural governor, etc. In other words, through all these changes in organization, from Nagasaki Bugyosho to Nagasaki prefecture, Sawa Nobuyoshi was head of all the organizations. Sato met Sawa with Baron Hübner sometime in, when would it be? I think 1870, not sure, or 1869. In April 1868, Sakata Moroto was appointed to the Kyushu Chimbu Nagasaki Governor's Office as a specialist of Yusoku Kojitsu, and after that, he worked in all the successor organizations until Nagasaki Prefecture, Ken, was created by administrative reform in September 1869. Hooray! During this time in Nagasaki, we can say that Sakata Moroto worked for Sawa Nobuyoshi as a Yusoku specialist. Then in 1869, Sawa Nobuyoshi became the first head of the newly created Foreign Office. After that, in October 1870, Sakata Moroto worked by order at the Akitsuki clan office. Then in January 1871, he was appointed to the Foreign Office as a secretary. When he began working at the Foreign Office, he was 61 years old. As will be stated below, Sakata Moroto worked for 17 years at the Foreign Office until 1888. He was clearly a very unusual employee in the Foreign Office because of his great age. It is unclear how it came about that Sakata Moroto was invited to work at the Foreign Office. However, Tanaka Masahiro guesses that he was recommended by the former Omura clan member Kusumoto Masataka and approved by Sawa Nobuyoshi. Kusumoto was a Nagasaki court judge who worked for Sawa when he was governor of Nagasaki Prefecture, Fu, and by Sawa's recommendation, after the Foreign Office was created, he was appointed chief secretary. During the Nagasaki period, Sakata Moroto worked as an assistant of Kusumoto. Sawa, who had been a colleague of Hirano Kuniomi, seemed to consider that Sakata had been Hirano's teacher, and this may have been a factor. Hirano had a violent death before the Meiji Restoration. Sakata Moroto was already advanced in age, but with the recommendations of Chief Secretary Kusumoto Masataka and the Foreign Secretary Sawa Nobuyoshi, he was able to work at the Foreign Office. In May 1870, at the Foreign Office, an archive section, Bunshoshi, was established, and the ranks of the staff members were decided, including Gon no Daisuke. Sakata Moroto was appointed first as Bunsho Gon no Daisuke, archivist, and proceeded to become Gaimu Gon no Daisuke, then Gaimu Itto Sakan. When Moroto's main work at the Foreign Office, which was compiling the chronology of Zokutsushin Zenran, was completed, his reward was recommended to his superiors. Sakata Moroto's main achievement at the Foreign Office was, of course, the compilation of Zokutsushin Zenran. But it did not stop there. Apart from that, he was involved in the compilation of many other documents and volumes, and these were included in his achievements. He also contributed to the collection of documents on the Ogasawara Islands. Regarding diplomatic documents exchanged between Japan and foreign countries, the ones exchanged between 1859 and 1860 were compiled as the Tsushin Zenran under the foreign magistrates such as Hirayama Seisai, 1815 to 1890. The main people who did the compiling were Tanabe Taichi and Hirosawa Shinichiro. In particular, Tanabe Taichi, 1831 to 1915, had an important role. The Tsushin Zenran was completed in 1862. After that, there were further compilations and additions, which made the grand total of 320 volumes, kan. In principle, the Tsushin Zenran was compiled and complete before the Meiji Restoration. Following on from the Tsushin Zenran, the part from 1861 onwards was compiled. So the Foreign Office compiled the Zokutsushin Zenran from 1861 to 1868, adding various sections and in chronological order. The chronology, Hennen no Bu, of the Zokutsushin Zenran was started in 1871 and completed in 1879. After that, the classified section, Ruishu no Bu, etc., were added, and the Zokutsushin Zenran amounted in total to 1,784 volumes. My lord, that's a lot of volumes. The person responsible for compiling the Zokutsushin Zenran was Sakata Moroto. After the Zokutsushin Zenran chronology was completed in 1879, in the following year, December 1880, he retired at his own request. Igan men honkan, negai ni yori honkan wo menzu, from the post of honkan official. But he continued to work at the Foreign Office until 1888. But he may have held an honorary post with no duties from 1885. He died in 1897, Meiji 30. He was 87 years old, or 88 by Kazoe Doshi, at the time of his death. Sakata Moroto's former collection of 15,000 books, Sakata Bunko, was absorbed into the Nanki Bunko collection founded by Tokugawa Yorimichi, 1872 to 1925, the former head of the Kishu clan. After the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923, the Nanki Bunko collection was donated to Tokyo University, so now Moroto's collection is held at the Tokyo University Library. This library has 4 manuscripts, the Sakata and Nakahara versions of Ukiyo-e Ruikō, Sekine Shisei Zoho Ukiyo-e Ruikō, and Iwa Demo no Ki. There were already 2 copies of Iwa Demo no Ki in the Nanki Bunko. They may both be from Sakata Moroto's former collection. One of them is the original of the one held at Cambridge University. Okay, I think this is the 4th one mentioned. Sekine Shisei, 1825 to 1893. Sekine Shisei was born in Edo's Kayaba-cho in 1825, Ansei 8. He was 21 years younger than Saito Gesshin, 1804-1878. During the Bakumatsu period, Sekine worked as a uo-goyo-tashi, an official of the fish providers or purveyors for the shogunate. As will be stated later, this is connected with Onaya Fish Shop. After the Meiji Restoration, he collected rare and sought-after books, calmly living free from worldly care. This is why Sekine Shisei was able to collect books, investigate drama, and furthermore publish books in these fields, and became well known for this. Examples of his works are Shisei Airoku, Meijin Kishinroku, and Toto Gekijo Enkakushi. I rather like that phrase, calmly living free from worldly care. Would that anybody could do that. I certainly would like to. The Kokubungaku scholar Sekine Masanao was his eldest son, and the drama and art critic Sekine Mokuan was his second son. Masanao also knew a lot about Yusoku Kojitsu and wrote several books, Shozoku Kachu Zukai, Kyuden Chodo Zukai, Yusaku Kojitsu Jiten, and others. Sekine Shisei's life overlapped partly with the long-lived Ukiyo-e artist Hokusai, 1760 to 1849. They met 2 or 3 times. Iijima Kyoshin, in order to write his Life of Katsushika Hokusai, asked old people about Hokusai. At that time, Meiji 23, 1890, the old people were Yomono Umehiko, Tsuyuki Kosho, Sekine Shisei, and a certain Tosaki, maybe Tosaki Bunshi. As for Sekine Shisei, Iwamoto Yonetaro wrote in an article that he was the grandson of the antiquarian bookseller Darumaya Goichi, Iwamoto Goichi. Goichi's adopted son, Iwamoto Katoshi's son, Iwamoto Yonetaro, wrote in an article about Meiji antiquarian bookshops the following memory, including Sekine Shisei's role as customer and close friend of the bookseller Darumaya. It is rather long, but I wish to quote it here. There was a time when Sekine Shisei often frequented Darumaya Goichi's shop. Okay. Of the customers who came to the shop Darumaya, around half of them were Darumaya Goichi's friends, such as Ryūtei Senka, 1804 to 1868, who became Ryūtei Tanehiko II, Karashia Ishizuka Hokai, 1799 to 1862. Karashia was the name of his shop. Miyagi Gengyo, 1817 to 1880. Kanagaki Robun, 1829 to 1894. Sekine Shisei, 1825 to 1893, and others. Since Sekine Shisei is mentioned in Mr. Saito Kenzo II, owner of Rinro Kaku's talk, I would like to talk about him. Sekine was a brother of the owner of a sake shop located in front of the first high school, Ichiko, in Hongo. The sake shop, which was called Takasakiya, was very sumptuous. He may be a great uncle of the current owner of the shop. Before the Meiji Restoration, 1868, around the Maien and Bunkyu eras, 1860 to 1864, Sekine was the uncle of the owner of Takasakiya, and he was a playboy and waster. Then he started to work for one of the fish wholesalers, actually Onaya, the office which supplied fish to Edo Castle or the shogunate, in Nihonbashi as a bookkeeper. In Rakugo comic stories, a young playboy who was disowned by his rich father was likely to be looked after by tradesmen, such as carpenters and plasterers who worked for the young playboy's father. In this situation, a young playboy would be encouraged to work in order to return to his father's house. He had to show his good intentions to his father. Usually, the young playboy's caretaker encouraged him to work. So Sekine started to work for a fish wholesaler, actually Onaya, as a bookkeeper. Since bookkeeping work was over before lunchtime and he was free in the afternoon, Sekine came to Darumaya, which was located in Nihonbashi, in central Tokyo, or Edo as it was, and partially he was enjoying himself at the shop. He borrowed books from Darumaya and wrote a voluminous book titled Shisei Airoku. When Sekine was working at a fish wholesaler, which was called Osakanaya, it literally it meant Onaya, he was called Shosan of Onaya. Sho was part of Sekine Shisei's name, and Onaya was the office which supplied fish to Edo Castle or the shogunate government. In the above quotation from Iwamoto Yonetaro's article, we can learn various things about Sekine Shisei, who often frequented Darumaya's shop. First among Darumaya's customers, there were Ryūtei Senka, the second Ryūtei Tanehiko, Ishizuka Hokaishi Kamakuraya Jubei Shukodo, Miyagi Gengyo, an Ukiyo-e artist, Kanagaki Robun, Gesakusha novelist, Sekine Shisei, and others. While they were book collectors, they were also Darumaya Goichi's friends. Regarding Darumaya Goichi's friends, including Sekine Shisei, Iwamoto Yonetaro writes the following in a collection of Darumaya's posthumous manuscripts. The content is similar to the above quotation, but it is interesting to note that Saito Geshin's name appears. Ichio or Ichi-o, Darumaya Goichi, had many friends. Particularly close friends were Sasagurien Chihogi, 1804 to 1858, Ryūtei Senka, 1804 to 1868, Nakagawa Kakai, Heitei Ginkei, Miyagi Gengyo, 1817 to 1880, and others. Sekine Shisei was working for Onaya as a bookkeeper and came to Darumaya and borrowed books from the shop and copied those books patiently. Copied. I don't know. Also, Kanagaki Robun, Shinrate Bansho 3 and the third, and others came to Darumaya to learn from Goichi. Apart from that, it was said that Yamazaki Yoshishige, Ishizuka Hokaishi, Saito Geshin, and others came to Darumaya too. But remaining letters prove that those people up to Shinrate Bansho really came to Darumaya. There are no letters which indicate that Yamazaki Yoshishige, Ishizuka Hokaishi, Saito Geshin came to Darumaya, but it was said they came. I think we're going to put an and, or I can put an and or an or here. Why do I think we'll put and, shall we? Okay. In the above quotation from the anecdotes of the collection of Darumaya Goichi's posthumous manuscripts, titled Kawara no Hibiki Shinobubusa, the friends mentioned include Sasagurien Chihogi, bookseller and kyoka poet, Nakagawa Kakai, kyoka poet, Heite Ginke, gesakusha novelist, and the third Shinra Bansho, kyoka poet, Yamazaki Yoshishige, essayist, and Saito Geshin. From the two quotations above, we know that Sekine Shisei was born the second or third son of the Takasakiya sake shop in Hongo, with a pastime of writing at which he was skillful. He kept the accounts for the fish shop Onaya, which supplied Edo Castle, and at a place called Yokkaichi on the opposite bank to the riverside fish market, there was an old bookstore named Darumaya, which he frequented, borrowing books and copying out manuscripts. And at the Onaya fish shop, where he kept the accounts, there were many playboys, dorakumono. For Sekine, who was good at writing, bookkeeping at the Onaya fish shop was probably a very convenient job. I hope the manuscripts didn't smell of fish. Anyway. At the antiquarian bookshop, Rinro Kaku, Saito Kenzo II also knew of Sekine's habit of book collecting. He quotes from the first generation, his father. His mention of Sekine was also included in the above quotation from Iwamoto Yonetaro. Sendai, the first generation Saito Kenzo, the owner of Rinro Kaku bookshop, said Sekine Shisei was Shichibe, Onaya, but I, Saito Kenzo II, could not understand what these names meant. As for Onaya of the Tokugawa period, I was told this. The officers of Onaya came to the fish market to take anything they liked, even things fish merchants kept separately for themselves, and they even made good excuses not to offer money. Sekine Shisei behaved similarly, and he took any books he liked, even books arranged to be sold previously, or books reserved for special reasons. That was the reason why he was called Onaya. I do not know the reason exactly, but I have heard that. From the above quotation from Saito Kenzo II, the second generation owner of Rinro Kaku, we can learn a little more about Sekine Shisei's work in the Bakufu era and about him as a book collector. He was sometimes really pushy as a collector. Well, if he was taking what he wanted, that's hardly collecting, is it? The Sekine Bunko. After the Meiji Restoration, Sekine Shisei collected rare books and lived well, but he also lived by selling his books. His collection was inherited by his eldest son, Masanao, and after father and son died, it was left to the Sekine family. The books collected by Sekine and Masanao are called the Sekine Bunko. Sekine's grandson, Masanao's second son, Sekine Toshio, published the catalogue Mokuroku of the Sekine Bunko. This Sekine Bunko Mokuroku contains books which used to be in the collection, though they are not part of it now. Sekine Toshio states the following in the commentary of the catalogue. Compared to my father, Sekine Masanao, Masanao, I think that is, should be. Am I right? Yes, Masanao, not Masano. Oh dear, I found another one. Whoops. Masanao. My grandfather, Sekine Shisei, was certainly, or more appropriately, a book collector. According to Dr. Koike Togoro, in the Bakumatsu, there were three great collectors of soft materials, nampamono, literally of soft topics. They were Darumaya Goichi, Taikado, a tobacco merchant, Karan, Kitao Shigemasu, who was a kabuki actor, according to Dr. Koike, and Sekine Shisei, my grandfather. Dr. Koike said he had seemed to have a lot of books, and that there were books with his ownership stamp all over the world today. Part omitted. I wonder why there are so many books with Sekine Shisei's stamp outside our home, and I think the reason is as follows. There were books which my grandfather himself relinquished during the time when he lived by selling his property after the Meiji Restoration. Also, there were books he allowed to be lent out and did not request to return since he was generous and became acquainted with many people. Finally, there were books which my uncle Sekine Mokuan borrowed from my father for his writing, and then he let them flow out from him. So he was Sekine seems to have been a bit easy come, easy go about books, both borrowing and appropriating them and letting them go. From this quotation, the following is clear. First, Sekine Shisei in the Edo era was one of the three big collectors of Nampa Bungaku, but the three collectors were active in slightly different periods. Darumaya Goichi was active in the late Edo period, particularly the Bakumatsu, Karan in the late Edo period, and Sekine Shisei in the Bakumatsu and Meiji periods. It may be possible to say that Darumaya Goichi and Sekine Shisei in the Bakumatsu were collectors in the same generation. Darumaya was 7 years older than Sekine. From two documents already quoted, Goichi's grandson's memoirs, etc., Sekine frequented Darumaya's bookshop and borrowed rare books of which he seems to have produced copies. However, Darumaya Goichi passed away just before the Meiji Restoration in 1868 at the age of 51, 52 by Kazuo Edoshi. So in the Meiji era, Sekine Shisei was the only major collector of Nambungaku literature. The interesting thing about Sekine Toshio's commentary is that the cause of Sekine Shisei's collection being reduced was that at first, after the Meiji Restoration, it was sold off to meet his living expenses. So, after the Meiji Restoration, Sekine Shisei did continue to collect rare books, but at the same time sold them to make ends meet. It may be that quite a lot of rare books passed through his hands in this way. So his collecting of rare books had something to do with his living. In Sekine Toshio's commentaries, Koike Togoro says that Sekine Shisei's collection is all around the world. He is probably referring to the parts of the collection in the Cambridge University Library. As will be mentioned in the final chapter, Koike probably heard this from the Kokubungaku scholar Itasaka Gen. Koike may also have known that some parts of the collection were in Paris. Okay. In connection with the Sekine Bunko, I want here to refer to a book by Saito Geshin written in his own hand. In the catalogue of the Sekine Bunko, there is a list or catalogue titled Meika Soko Shorui Kosei Kaki Ire Tosha Shorui, famous writers' drafts, proofreading documents, notes, mimeographed materials, etc. At the beginning, the list or catalogue is actually 2 sheets of photographs. This list or catalogue refers to 90 documents. Of these, 24 are of antique printed books. The remaining 66 are handwritten books, manuscripts, etc. Of these 66, the largest number are handwritten by Saito Geshin. Below are the 7 manuscripts by him, which are contained in the list. Meika Soko Shorui Kosei Kakiire Tosha Shorui. Tekiso Manpitsu, Tekiso Zassan, Shizuno Odamaki, Kumo no Itomaki, Kumo no Itomaki Shui, Buko Nempyo Soko Zanketsu, Kyoho Edo Nenkan. From this list of 7 manuscripts, we can see that in Sekine Shisei's collection of handwritten books and manuscripts, Saito Geshin's was the largest number, and next was the waka poet Kato Enao, 1693 to 1785, with 6. This reflects the connection between Shisei and Geshin in the Bakumatsu and early Meiji period. I want to refer to one more point concerning the Sekine Bunko catalogue and Saito Geshin's book collection. In the catalogue, there is the Edo Chirihiroi Shu manuscript. The catalogue entry is as follows. Whoops. The Edo Chirihiroi Shu manuscript, author already unknown in 1768, purchased, in 1868. Copies of 5 books in 1 volume from Hokaishi's collection with notes by Ryutei Tanehiko, 1783 to 1842, and Kitaseiro, 1765 to 1848. There is a note, Shikigo, that Saito Geshin purchased it in July of K04, 1868. There are many seals of ownership, such as Nampo Bunko, Library of Ota Nampo. The interesting thing about this Edo Chirihiroi Shu manuscript is the editor's note that Saito Geshin bought it in July of K04, 1868. He bought a copy from Ishizuka Hokaishi's collection and it appears finally to have been absorbed into Sekine Shisei's collection. Anyway, Sekine Shisei had several items from Saito Geshin's former collection. I want to focus on this point. Sekine Shisei and Saito Geshin seen from the latter's diary. Next, in connection with the 7 documents in the Sekine Bunko catalogue, which were handwritten by Saito Geshin, I want to investigate the relations between Sekine Shisei and Saito Geshin based on entries in the latter's diary. From the diary, we can know their relationship and the borrowing of books between their collections, but the diary does not pick up everything, since the part from 1871 to 1873 is missing. That part no longer exists. First, according to the diary entry for November 25th of KO2, 1866, on that day, Sekine took 1 sea bream, Tai, and 6 dory, hobo, and visited Saito Geshin's home. It was his first visit to Saito Geshin. At that time, Saito Geshin happened to be away from home, so they could not meet, but we can say their relations began from this point. In fact, the entries in Saito Geshin's diary regarding Sekine Shisei can broadly be divided into 2 types. One is about presents which Sekine brought or sent to Saito Geshin. The other is about written materials which Sekine borrowed from Saito Geshin. In short, their relationship was that the younger man, Sekine, sent presents to the older man, Saito, and in return he was allowed to borrow manuscripts and books from Saito. The presents were from the riverside market where Sekine worked, and before the restoration almost all the presents were fish, but after the restoration they changed to orizume, packed food, yokan, sweet bean jelly, and sake, alcohol. Listing all the presents chronologically from Saito Geshin's diary, they are as follows. Kato 2, 1866, sea bream, tai, dory, flounder, carré, half-beak, sayori. KO 3, 1867, flounder, hirame, sea bream, tai, horse mackerel, aji, shrimp, ebi, box of sugar. KO 4, Meiji 1, 1868, tuna, katsuo, wafer cake filled with bean jam, monaka, high-grade sake, bishu. Meiji 4 to 6, 1871 to 73, diary missing. Meiji 7, 1874, yokan, sweet bean jelly. Meiji 8, 1875, voucher for 3 large 1.8-liter bottles of sake, ishobin. Ishobin is 1.8 liters of bottle of sake. On the other hand, the entries regarding books borrowed by Sekine Shisei from Saito Geshin are as follows. Note that several names are used to refer to Sekine. KO2, 1866, November 28th. On Sakana Yakusho Kakiyaku Shichiro Bei, Sekine Shisei came and borrowed 8 volumes of my books. Is that? On is the honorific. Sakana Yakusho is the office which supplied fish to the shogunate, and Kakiyaku or Shoyaku means secretary. All from Saito Geshin's diary. This was the day when Sekine and Saito Geshin first met. Sekine borrowed 8 volumes. 3 days previously, Sekine had brought sea bream, tai, and 6 dory, hobo, to his house, so that had an effect. KO3, 1867, February 13th, in the morning, on Sakana Yakusho Shichibe, Sekine Shisei, came and returned 2 books. April 18th, on Sakana Yakusho Shichibe, Sekine Shisei sent me a sea bream, 10 horse mackerel, aji, and some shrimp, returned 6 books and borrowed 6 more. Fish for books, or books for fish. August 27th, on Sakana Yakusho Shichibe, Sekine Shisei came and borrowed 5 volumes of Soko, Sui Yosoko, and 2 volumes of Shinobu Gusa. This entry states that Sekine borrowed 5 volumes of Sui Yosoko and 2 volumes of Shinobu Gusa. Soko is Sui Yosoko. It was a Japanese bound book, Waseibon, of several volumes in which Geshin recorded various things. It is now held in the National Library. Shinobu Gusa is a Kansubon scroll, which I will explain later. November 16th, Komagome on Sakana Yakusho Kakiyaku Shichibe, Sekine Shisei, came and borrowed 7 volumes. Komagome or Hongo is the place in Tokyo where Sekine Shisei lived. Meiji 2, 1869, November 23rd. While I was out, Komagome Shichibe Sekine Shisei came and returned books. Meiji 7, 1874, November 21st, Matsuya Sake Shop, Konenshi, Sekine Shisei came bringing bean jelly. He borrowed 8 books. December 29th, Konenshi, Sekine Shisei came to return books. Meiji 8, 1875, February 7th, in the evening, Konen, Sekine Shisei came and borrowed Buko Nempyo Kohen and Rikaku Fugo. This means that Sekine borrowed the latter part of the manuscript Buko Nempyo and the Rikaku Fugo. According to the next entry, we know that Sekine returned the Buko Nempyo. February 28th, while I was out, Konenshi Sekine Shisei came to return the Buko Nempyo. May 17th, after lunch, I went to Hongo 4th Chome, Yonchome, to Matsuya Sake Shop, Sekine Shichibe Shisei, but he was out. Hoei Kyogen out. This means that Saito Geshin took Hoei Kyogen and other books to Sekine's house and loaned them, though he happened to be away from home at that time. November 17th, Konenshi Sekine Shisei came from Hongo and borrowed Manpitsu. This means that Sekine borrowed Tekiso Manpitsu. Geshin wrote it himself, and it is in the Sekine Bunko catalogue. From this, we know that Sekine collected Saito Geshin's handwritten Tekiso Manpitsu, random jottings. This amounted to 30 volumes, and he could not make copies since he borrowed them for a short time, so probably he acquired them after Saito Geshin's death. Now this book is in the National Library. From the above Saito Geshin's diary entries, we know that he was the senior collector, senpai, of Sekine Shisei, and before the Meiji Restoration, as he was working at the accounts of Onaya in the fish market, Sekine frequently brought delicious fish to Saito Geshin. In return, he was able to borrow books from Geshin's collection and probably prepared manuscripts from them. After the Restoration, Sekine's connection with the fish market was broken off, so the presents changed from fish to other things. Since Sekine's family were sake merchants, high-grade sake was included in the presents. Memories of Sekine Shisei and Saito Geshin. It was probably through their book collections, but Sekine Shisei had relations with Kawatake Mokuami, kabuki dramatist, 1816 to 1893, Ishizuka Hokaishi, Iwamoto Katoshi, Konakamura Kiyonori, Otsuki Joden, Kanagaki Robun, and others. Of these, Ishizuka Hokaishi and Kanagaki Robun have already appeared in this book as close friends of Darumaya Goichi, while Iwamoto Katoshi was Darumaya Goichi's adopted son. What is really important in connection with the Ukiyo-e ruikō manuscript is the connection between Sekine and Otsuki Joden, 1845 to 1931. Otsuki Joden was a scholar and author, an intellectual who was active in many fields. His main works include Shinsen Yogaku Nempyo and others, but he also knew a lot about Japanese music, and there are books of his such as Zokkyoku no Yurai and Bugaku Zusetsu. Saito Geshin had also compiled a book about Japanese music titled Seikyoku Ruisan, so their interests overlapped in the field of music. Regarding their ages, Sekine Shisei was about 20 years older than Otsuki. Also, Otsuki Joden had written Edo Fukushoku Shidan, a history of Edo fashion. So he had some connection with Yusoku Kojitsu. Also, as regards the last years of Sekine Shisei, Tsuboichi Shioyo's book, Shitsume Toji no Bakin to Sono Kate no Aun, which is a collection of magazine articles, is useful. Tsubouchi met Sekine in 1885 or 1886 when Sekine was in his 60s and describes his appearance. He describes Sekine as being 70 years old, but since he was born in 1825, at that time he was 61 or 62 years old. Tsubouchi frequently visited Sekine, so he heard a lot about Geshin. A quotation: I occasionally visited Sekine Shisei, who was said to be the most knowledgeable person about the history of popular literature, theatre, red light districts, and firemen at that time. He was the father of Dr. Sekine Masanao, 1860 to 1932, and Sekine Mokuan, 1863 to 1923, and he was around 70 years old at that time, but seemed to be full of vigor. He continued compiling with devotion almost every day from morning to evening. When he felt very tired, he went to a narrow or small second-hand bookshop and sat in front of the shop, and he talked about various old books or gossip or other topics without any restraint, keeping company with the agreeable owner of the bookshop. The bookshop was located beside Yakushi, the healing Buddha, on the street of Izukura Yokomachi, which was very narrow and was not connected in a straight line to the slope in Hongo. One of Sekine Shisei's methods to keep his health was to spend time chatting. How interesting. Good idea, too. Whoops. We can learn various things from Tsubouchi's memoirs. First, the above was just after he had published his novel, Tosei Shosei Katagi, and he writes, "My new knowledge of the history of Tokugawa art and literature was greatly increased under the patronage of Sekine Shisei. I first learned of the existence of Iwademo no Ki and Kumono Itomaki thanks to him. He learned a lot about Gesaku novels, etc. from Sekine Shisei. The Iwademo no Ki, which he mentions, is one of the books which we are using in this book to investigate Sato's book collecting. Sekine Shisei is famous as a drama researcher, particularly of kabuki. It may be that he developed a particular interest in kabuki while he was working at Onaya in the fish market. The connection between riverside fish markets and kabuki has always been a deep one. Has it really? How interesting. The fish market had strongly supported Ichikawa Danjuro the ninth Ichikawa Danjuro, 1838 to 1903. Danjuro had worked to improve kabuki and emphasized its historical morality through katsureki mono, living history plays. That is why he assembled scholars with knowledge of Yusoku Kojitsu and formed a study group, Kyū-kokai, in about 1883. One of the members of the study group was Sekine Shisei. He had a deep connection with Yusoku Kojitsu. In fact, his eldest son, Sekine Masanao, was an important scholar of Yusoku Kojitsu. In the final part of the introduction of Sekine Shisei, I want to introduce Otsuki Joden's memory of Saito Geshin. This was connected with Sakata Moroto's working at the Foreign Office. It happened in 1877, Meiji 10, when Sekine Shisei accompanied Saito Geshin on a visit to Otsuki Joden's house. The approximate ages of those connected with the story at the time were as follows. Geshin was 73, Sekine was 52, and Joden was 32. Geshin died in the following year. Since the coming of Commodore Matthew Calbraith Perry's black ships, Kurofune, in the Bakumatsu period in 1853 and 1854, there had been discussions about opening ports, kaiko, and expelling foreigners, joi, and Japan had been thrown into chaos. Saito Geshin had organized these events into a chronology. He called this Kyoko Kiji. In total, it amounted to 50 volumes. Geshin wanted to donate these volumes to the government, probably for their value as diplomatic documents. He may have realized that he did not have long to live. When Geshin visited Joden's house, he took his intention to Otsuki Joden and Sekine Shisei. That may have been Geshin's purpose in visiting Otsuki Joden. Joden agreed to be the intermediary, and the 50 volumes were donated to the Foreign Office. The Foreign Office, in gratitude to Geshin, gave him several gold coins, ? Geshin was delighted about that. In the 50 volumes which he presented to the Foreign Office, the document included Enkai Kibun, 40 volumes, and Shohaku Sohitsu, 21 volumes. These two documents were later transferred from the Foreign Office to the Cabinet Office archives. Now they are held in the National Archives of Japan. Considering the point that Otsuki Joden was the intermediary by whom Geshin's books were donated to the Foreign Office, it is probable that Joden and Sakata Moroto of the Foreign Office already knew each other. Regarding the above story, according to the research of Tanaka Masahiro, it is recorded in the following way in the Foreign Office archives. On August the 11th, 1877, Meiji 10, Geshin requested permission to donate the Enkai Kibun, 40 volumes, and Shohaku Sohitsu, 21 volumes. Geshin had recorded all that he had heard in the years when the foreigners began intervening. The Foreign Office Records section considered that it was a mixture of precious and useless items, but that it would be useful in compiling old records. Saito Geshin's donation of books is related to the donations mentioned in the foreword of this book. In particular, it is similar to the case of Fujikawa Ken. As stated above, in 1873, after the building containing the Dajokan, Grand Council of State, burnt down, contributions of documents to the new government were encouraged. Geshin's and Fujikawa Ken's donations were part of this. It is clear from Otsuki Joden's memory of Saito Geshin's donation of books that the collectors and book lovers, Saito Geshin, Sekine Shisei, Otsuki Joden, Sakata Moroto, and others, had connections through their collections. Connections through their collections. Wow. Double N and double L. This must have influenced their transcriptions and borrowing of books. Comparing the four manuscripts with books in other collections. As already mentioned, Saito Geshin is in the preface to Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō refers to two manuscripts of Ukiyo-e ruikō. One of these is the base text for Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō. It is Eisen's Zoku Ukiyo-e ruikō Mumeo Zuihitsu. It was compiled by Eisen in 1833, Tempo 4. Geshin borrowed it from Ishizuka Hokaishi. The other is the Ukiyo-e ruikō, which in the summer of 1833 Geshin produced as a manuscript and took into his collection. What happened to it thereafter seems to be a complicated problem. Another complicated problem. At this point, I want to suggest that there is some connection between Sato's formerly collected Ukiyo-e Ko in Cambridge University Library and Saito Geshin's Ukiyo-e ruikō. Indeed, they might actually be the same thing. The situation may be a little complicated, but I believe this to be the case. As will be stated below, there is no absolute proof, but there seems to be good grounds for this belief. In this complicated situation, it seems that Sekine Shisei borrowed the book and took it into his collection. Moreover, Ukiyo-e Ko, like Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō, seems to have been written in Geshin's own hand. This book, as a way of investigating how Ernest Sato acquired Saito Geshin's Zoho Ukiyo-e ruikō, is focused on four manuscripts. Comparing the four manuscripts of four collectors, including Geshin and Sato, I wish to investigate how Sato purchased Geshin's manuscript. I think I'm going to take a break here. Possibly you'll be glad of it as well. So let me just close the share, and thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye now.